I don't know about you, but we all have bracket brain on this day after Selection Sunday, so we're leaning in. The SEC is all over this thing, so we ask our reporters, how can the football teams learn from basketball's success? And we'll hone in on the Gators. DJ Lagway was not seen throwing at practice, so is it time to panic? And our friend Smoke thinks one coach on the hot seat will miss a bowl game this season, but he'll be saved by the buyout. All that and more as the ultimate college football show starts right now. Welcome into the Ultimate College Football Show. He's Smoke Dixon. I'm Emily Proud, and we hope to answer a lot of questions on today's show. But Smoke, what's the number one thing you want answered?
When are we going to see DJ Lagway throw the football?
I'm getting kind of stressed out a little bit.
Hit that button.
Oh, okay. He says hit the panic button. We'll ask our friend Zach Goodall later on in the show from Swamp 24/7 if we should hit that panic button. But it is time for the opening kick. Everyone has thoughts on what the future of spring games will look like in college football, so let's hear from an innovative head coach, Coach Prime, today on his vision for the Buffs.
Spring game will be televised. ESPN2 will broadcast spring game on the 19th. We got to sell this thing out and pack this thing because the way the trend is going, you never know if this is going to be the last spring game. I don't believe in that. I don't really want to condone that. I would like to play the spring. Actually, I like to play against another team in the spring. That's what I'm trying to do right now, to have it competitive. Playing against your own guys kind of get monotonous, and you really can't tell the level of your guys because, you know, it's the same old, same old. Everybody kind of know each other towards the end. I would like to style it like the pros. I would like to practice against someone for a few days, then you have the spring game. And I think the public will be satisfied with that tremendously. I think it's a tremendous idea. Yeah, I've told those personnel who should understand that it's a tremendous idea.
So we've talked about leaning on the pros in these OTA-style practices, but now Coach Prime is saying, let's have joint practices with another team and then play them at the end of the week. How much closer are we to solving this spring game conundrum?
Knowing that Coach Prime saying that, I think we're getting closer. And I think that's the right angle to go at. And me being an old personnel guy, I would love that. True competition. You don't have to see you go against our own team, against somebody else. And me being one of the best poachers in the world, give me a little bit of chance to go out there and see my action in front of me and get my own notes on it.
Yeah. How do we make this make sense for both teams involved? I know you and I were chatting a little bit before the show on where you could potentially find an opponent and what's in it for both of them.
I would go FCS within your state. And now for your FCS programs, that gives you an opportunity now. So you know what? I can level up and go play against one of the big boys to see exactly where I stand. And for the guys in the personnel department, you get to go see the best players at the next level within your state that you can use to transfer over and get all that done. And when you see it, like, Prime is on something right now, Emily. I don't think he's that far off.
No. There's so many different ideas when it comes to solving spring games, and this one from today was quite interesting, but there's another one that we want to talk about in Washington, where Jedd Fisch also has some ideas. I'd say he's maybe zigging while other coaches zag. He is opening up every spring practice to the public, and the school's official release describes the spring game as this, quote, a true game with 4 quarters of full speed action. The fact that you have to declare that, because that's not necessarily something that we have been seeing lately with spring games. But he also had this interesting quote. He went on the Athletics Until Saturday podcast and said, quote, I want our players to be able to be promoted. I want our players to be seen. I want people within our community to come out and watch this practice and say, I would love to do an NIL deal with this guy and promote this player or position group. What do you think about this strategy where everybody's closing it off? He's saying, come see and come have some deals with our guys and make them some money.
Yes, yes, yes. The last 2 coaches that we talked about, just trying to get ahead of the curve and just evolve as the game changes. Now, you're giving me an opportunity for the world to see me play against somebody else and also have an opportunity to now market myself. Coach, I'm all for that. And I'm just happy that there's a coach out there that says, Spring football is vanilla football.
Yeah.
No one cares. You're not going to run anything that you're going to do game prep wise for your opponent. You're just running the basics. So let everybody come out there and see it, and have your fans that's been pushed away and ticket prices being jacked up have an opportunity to come see your players.
I joked, though, that he's zigging while others zag. This is not something that we see from coaches. If anything, they're shutting the doors, they're locking it, they're putting a bubble over their facilities. Why aren't other programs doing this if it sounds like so no-brainer?
Coaches are robots. They all do the same thing because everybody else has done it that same way. And you see the ones that evolved, usually are the ones that take off, and they're ahead of the curve. And coaches will usually say, well, players need to adapt. Well, coaches, you need to adapt to the new formula of the way that the college game is being viewed and how your audience wants to see it being played.
He also said it was something fun for fans to go out and see them. He says, we're asking fans to pay a lot of money to get these players in. We might as well let them watch these players practice, right?
Our Saturday practices when I was at Maryland, or even when I was playing in college football, those are the best ones.
Yeah.
Because we knew we had an audience, at least to come out and just cheer us on. And you don't want to go through practices hearing the whistle being blown and your coach is yelling at you. You'd rather hear the fans, and now you get the adrenaline. It turns you up a little bit to make those extraordinary plays.
Yeah, you don't just have to rely on the practice playlist to get you fired up. It's fun when you have fans and cheering and atmosphere.
Emily, we didn't have music. And some coaches, old school coaches, don't allow you to have music.
Yeah.
So it's just
very
like I just
stale.
said, oh my God, blah, 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 blah. On a Saturday, that Friday night was already bad anyway.
So bring some fans, get some autographs afterwards. I like what they're doing at Washington and potentially in the future at Colorado. Hey, if you have any ultimate burning questions for us, make sure that you submit them. We take them on Instagram. We take them on YouTube. We'll answer them at the end of the show. So if you have any of them, we've got people keeping track throughout. So drop your ultimate burning questions. All right, the SEC got a record 14 teams into the NCAA tournament, and we're not here to debate necessarily the validity of that. If you want to hear about that, our guys on the basketball side of things had a show this morning getting you ready to go for March Madness. You can check that out on the YouTube channel. But you know what? After a not-so-dominant football season, now you have a dominant basketball season. But in your opinion, how much does basketball success actually matter to the conference compared to football success?
Well, it's now showing you that they do play basketball. They do play something other than football in the South. And from my point of view, all the time is always going to talk about just talent acquisition. And if you look at the basketball model in the SEC, you've seen a lot of lower level players leveling up, playing well and having success with older teams. So the SEC football can learn from this. You don't have to go for the best on the best team and overpay. You can go Moneyball status and get your team better.
Speaking of Moneyball, there is a dollar figure that is associated with this. There's money to be made in the college football playoff, but there's also money to be made in March Madness. And as it looks right now, it's the exact same. In the March Madness tournament, $26 million earned so far. Of course, there's an opportunity to earn $2 million per game, so it will go up from that $26 million figure, which is exactly how much the SEC earned with their playing in the college football playoff. So it looks like the money is somewhat similar, but I want to bring in another opinion on this because when we're talking brackets, there's only one person to call, and that is Brad Crawford, a.k.a. Brad Brackets. What's your take on the SEC's, I guess, excitement about the basketball success compared to what we see on the football side of things?
The biggest question for me, Emily, is how many of these 14 teams are going to get to the second weekend? And then of those remaining squads, how many get to the Final Four in San Antonio? That's the ultimate question. No one's going to remember this season 5 years from now that the SEC set a record with, more than a dozen teams in if a few of those teams don't get to San Antonio at the Final Four. You've got Auburn, you've got Tennessee, you've got Florida now, one of the hottest teams in the country, 2 number 1 seeds, the Tigers and the Gators. If those teams don't make it past, the Sweet 16, then it's probably a failure this postseason. We've seen Greg Sankey have the microphone the last several weeks, pounding his chest about the SEC. Well, all that matters now is how the end of this story is written a couple weeks from now in April when March Madness is over. How many of these SEC teams are going to be able to avoid upsets, unlike the last couple NCAA tournaments, and ultimately get past the second weekend.
Brad, happy St. Patrick's Day, man. You just killed the
Thank you.
entire mood of the SEC basketball play this year.
Too green.
Listen, greatest conference ever, first and foremost. And they're going to get a national championship out of this, regardless of how you see it. If saying someone's going to get upset, it's a tournament. Someone's going to get upset. But we are going to crown a national championship from the SEC. Blank that statement.
When you have when you have 14 of 68 teams, the chances are pretty high you're going to get a crack at that final game, right?
Yeah.
And then Cooper Flagg injury for Duke. Duke is probably the overall tournament favorite, and that's the one program the SEC knows it's going to have to get past, probably in the Elite Eight or Final Four to get there. So I think there's 4 or 5 SEC teams that are capable of cutting down the nets, but who knows? Maybe a 9 seed Georgia, maybe Texas A&M, maybe Kentucky under Mark Pope, first-year coach. Maybe one of those outside teams in the mid-tier of the conference gets hot and gets to San Antonio.
Or just Bama.
Or Bama.
I don't have much faith in Nate Oates, man. They don't play defense in Tuscaloosa.
Okay, but they were in the Final Four last year. I'm not going to make the case for Alabama necessarily. Also, this is a football show, so we definitely want to turn our attention towards the football side of things. But like I said at the beginning, we all have bracket brain, and so throughout this month, we're going to continue to bring you a different bracket on each show. The first one is very simple. We took the top seeds for the NCAA men's basketball tournament, but we're treating it as if it's their football teams. And before everybody asks me, I know you see that 8-9 game with St. John's. They did used to have a football team, but stopped playing over 2 decades ago. So we're counting that first round game as a forfeit, and we'll move Texas Tech on to the quarterfinal round. And both of you have picked this entire bracket. Before we show it, though, Brad, which first round matchup intrigues you the most in this hypothetical basketball to football bracket?
I like Wisconsin, Tennessee. Luke Fickell has to do something now with the Badgers. He got extended this offseason despite a losing record last year. Doesn't know what the quarterback situation is for 2025. And that first round game against Tennessee going to Neyland Stadium, that would be hypothetically really tough for Wisconsin to get through. But I don't know, man. Big Ten defense travels. And maybe if Wisconsin can run the football against Tennessee and some of those guys that are now in the draft, like James Pierce Jr., maybe Wisconsin pulls that upset. I don't see it, though.
Yeah, the most intriguing one to me right now is Iowa State, Michigan State. Jonathan Smith comes in second year with Aiden Childs as a quarterback. Can they make that step? And now you got the vet now, Rocco Beck. Anthony Beck's son with Matt Campbell at Iowa State. They play a good brand of football, turn into physical football. And when you put that ball in the air, that's secondary. They usually pull it down, led by Jeremiah Cooper. I try to get at Vanderbilt, but that's a whole nother thing.
See, there's so much fun with these hypothetical football matchups that we're going to see. Actually, we're not going to see these on the court because we just kind of made up this bracket based on the seeds. But either way, let's go ahead and show Smoke's bracket so you can see what he thinks is going to happen. So again, not a whole lot of excitement in that first round, but looking at the quarterfinals, we got Florida over Tennessee, moving on to the semis. You've got Texas Tech over Auburn, Alabama over Houston, Iowa State over Duke. The Final Four, Florida, Texas Tech, Alabama, Iowa State, in the national championship between Florida and Alabama. The Crimson Tide coming out on top from the football side of things. Let's quickly run through Brad's bracket here, and we have 2 big discrepancies that I want to point out. He has Auburn beating Texas Tech, moving on to that next round, and he also has Duke over Iowa State, moving on to the Final Four. And so I will start with you, Brad, here. What do you like about Auburn over Texas Tech in that second round?
I like Hugh Freeze with his back against the wall here with the Tigers. He went in the portal and got Oklahoma quarterback Jackson Arnold. He's got to be the guy this year for the Tigers. There's no Jarquez Hunter to rely on to get you 1,000 yards. He's got Cam Coleman, who will be a sophomore this season, had a great 5-star freshman year last fall. This is the year for Auburn. I think the win total is 7.5. They're one of the teams that I'm most confident in getting the over this season, this fall in the SEC. I think Auburn is a much improved team. I think they would win that matchup. And then Duke, Darian Mensah. They overpaid for Tulane's quarterback. They did. But Manny Diaz showed in year 1 at Duke that, he's going to kind of keep it going and finish what Mike Elko started there in Durham.
Now, Brad, you understand that styles makes fights. And the way that Auburn wants to play the game is they want to play grass basketball, not physical basketball. Texas Tech going out in the portal, fortified in their trenches, and going with a strong running game with Quentin Joyner from USC transfer that came in. He understands that at the end of the season, it's about physical football. Ohio State showed you. Whoever can play the physical game within the trenches, get enough explosive plays, but they'll get that done. But killing the clock, stopping the ball from being scored in your red zone, that's a formula. Let's not go up to the Hugh Freeze chucking and ducking and throwing the ball around the yard with his new quarterback or his new receivers. We still play football that's being ran and tackled between the line of scrimmage.
And Smoke, you liked Iowa State over Duke here. Both of you guys have talked about each other's quarterbacks. Is that what it came down to for you here?
Well, quarterback play, but yes, secondary play for Iowa State. Right. Iowa State was one of the top 5 teams last year in turnovers, in terms of getting the ball back, and they have a ball hawk back there. I spoke about him earlier, my man, Jeremiah Cooper. You put the ball up in there, and I know that you said they overpaid for Mensa, and they probably did. But we're going to show you when we beat them in the game that you throw the ball enough, we're going to pick it off. And when we do pick it off, we score touchdowns. So all that money being spent, the secondary is going to make you pay.
Hey, the last time I saw Iowa State play a big game, they did not look so hot against Arizona State at Jerry World. So I'm not selling all my Iowa State stock. But look, Manny Diaz and Duke, Wallace Wade Stadium on a good Saturday, it can be a little lively. It's a small venue in the ACC. It's about an hour up the road from me. But imagine
40,000
the hype behind this game. Look, man, what if Duke hosted a playoff game this season? I mean, that'd be the wildest parity-filled season ever in college football. But the ACC, outside of Clemson, it is pretty open. So it's not out the realm of possibilities.
Yeah, and again, like I said, styles makes fights. And I don't think that you want to really go play against Iowa and Matt Campbell and the way that he gets his team prepared at the end of the season. I believe you guys will start out hot and you'll ride that little Mensa train. But once you come back and you start playing quality football, trench war football, and getting the ball back on defense to score more points, yeah, I'm going to bet on my man, Rocco Beck, veteran with the better quarterback and a better head coach that's done this longer. This is his second year with Manny Diaz. We understand what Diaz did at the other place that he was at. I have more faith in Matt Campbell and Rocco Beck beating Duke head-to-head, even if it's a home game.
Okay, well, either way, you both have Florida and Alabama winning their semifinal matchups, no matter who it is that they're competing against. So let's talk about this national championship game between Florida and Alabama. I think I want to go quarterback conversation with this as well, just because there's a big question mark at Alabama, and we feel pretty secure with DJ Lagway at Florida. So how much was that part of the discussion, internal discussion within your mind, Brad Crawford, when you were trying to decide who would win this national championship game?
Man, y'all got me hating on DJ again. And look, I'm picking Alabama because Alabama is my preseason dark horse to win the SEC. And I say dark horse lightly because you don't get many opportunities to pick Alabama in the preseason as a dark horse. But right now, Georgia, Texas, there are some other schools in the SEC probably on better footing right now. But Ty Simpson at quarterback, I think he's going to be the guy post-spring. I think he's going to win this job over 5-star freshman Keelan Russell. And I've said it on record before, I think Alabama's production at the quarterback spot is better this season than it was with Jalen Milroe. And that's going to wind up being that's going to be great numbers for Ryan Williams, who I think behind Jeremiah Smith, he's the number 2 wideout in the country.
Ooh, I like that. But listen, 2 is better than 1. I'm going to say both quarterbacks have to play this year because it's college football. Yeah. If the 5-star is not getting on the field, you know what's going to happen. He's probably going to get up out your building and leave. But it's not only a Ryan Williams show. Latsier Brooks, I'm going to give you that name right now, from out of Jersey. Explosive, dynamic freshman that's coming in this week that can score with the ball in his hands. And then you also have Rico Scott out of Harrisburg, PA. 2 other receivers that's going to give Ty Simpson and Russell the opportunity to create more explosive plays. Offensive line, they're going to be fine. Proctor can protect it. You only have to replace 1. And the running back game is just okay. But in sense of explosive play on the outside, I'm telling you, Latair Brooks, Rico Scott, just remember those names, along with Ryan Williams, with whoever they put at quarterback, is going to get it done.
I mean, Florida getting to the Natty would be insane for Billy Napier. I mean, this time a year ago, he's on the hot seat, facing the nation's toughest schedule, and he was able to conquer that last November, beat LSU, beat Ole Miss. DJ Lagway played a huge role in that. But right now in mid-March, do we even know Lagway is healthy? I mean, he hasn't thrown yet this spring, so it's a question. But I think Alabama, Florida, look, bring on the SEC bias, because that would be all we heard about all January if those two teams were to make the championship game.
It looks like the old school when Coach Spurrier and whoever was the head coach at Alabama during my time was Mike Dubose, Dennis Franchione. That's where the SEC was decided back in the day, between Florida and Bama.
I think it did help us
Legion
out.
Field, baby.
It did help us out that SEC basketball was so dominant this year that we could see some of these teams potentially playing for a national championship. But yeah, I think Florida would shock the world, definitely. When it comes to DJ Lagway's status as well, we're going to ask our friend Zach Goodall about it later in the show, because he was the one that initially scared us all with that tweet, not knowing if he's throwing during practice. So hopefully we get that question answered. Brad Crawford, Brad Brackets, thank you so much for being here on our first Ultimate Bracket. You can check out more of his work on 247sports.com. You can get all the latest recruiting rankings, wall-to-wall team coverage, transfer portal updates, and of course, they're talking some basketball on there as well. So head to 247sports.com. We keep talking about this SEC dominance, so we asked our team site experts from some of the top SEC seeds, what can the football team learn from the basketball team? We'll kick things off with the number 1 overall seeded Tigers.
Yeah, what this Auburn football team can learn from the basketball team coming up this fall in particular for Hugh Freeze's third season is how to highlight their best player at quarterback. Janai Broome may not look it at 6'10", but he is absolutely the quarterback of this Auburn basketball team. He's been their leading assist man all season, but more so than that, the gravity of him on the interior as an offensive playmaker opens things up for everybody else. You think about this Auburn football team, so much talent at wide receiver, so much talent elsewhere on the roster. Can Jackson Arnold be that playmaker that demands attention on the inside? And like Janai Broome does for Auburn basketball, can Deuce Knight potentially as the freshman come in and do that as well? Feels like Auburn has not been a quarterback away, but that it's held them back a little bit. Peyton Thorne had a lot of numbers for this team last season. Bruce Pearl does such a good job catering to Janai Broome's skill sets and allows it to affect everyone else. Can Jackson Arnold be that player for Auburn? That's certainly the expectation for Hugh Freeze this fall. That's something that they can definitely do a better job of, is getting the quarterback in a position to succeed, considering they have so much talent around him.
The biggest thing the Tennessee football program can take from the Tennessee basketball program is finding those gems in the transfer portal. Over the past 2 off seasons, Rick Barnes and the Vols have brought in Dalton Knecht from Northern Colorado and then Chaz Lanier from North Florida. Obviously, Knecht probably would have been the National Player of the Year last season, if not for Zach Edey, and he helped the Vols reach the Elite Eight for just the second time in program history. Lanier this season was the SEC Newcomer of the Year and the top scorer for a team that's a number 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. Certainly, Zakai Ziegler and Jemai Meshack have been the heart and soul and the backbone of these recent Rick Barnes teams, and Josh Heupel likes to build his program with those kinds of guys. The Vols have emphasized traditional high school recruiting classes, developing those players and keeping them out of the portal versus a portal-heavy approach that a lot of other SEC teams have taken. But just because the Vols aren't bringing in as many players from the portal as some of their SEC rivals doesn't mean they can't find quality difference makers in there too. And I think their best addition so far was cornerback Jermon McCoy. He came over from Oregon State and was an all-SEC performer last season for a top 10, top 5 defense that was the catalyst for the Vols making the college football playoff in 2024.
The biggest thing that Alabama's football team can learn from its basketball team relates to roster building. Nate Oates has convinced players coming into the program, whether it's transfers or high school players, that his system best prepares them for the NBA. He shows each one of them a PowerPoint, shows them the track record of producing draft picks since he's been at Alabama, and shows them how his system, which he calls an NBA-style system, puts those players in that position to get noticed. Obviously, on the football side, Alabama has produced a lot of NFL draft picks, but there's also been a coaching transition from Nick Saban to Kalen DeBoer, and as such, there needs to be a little bit of a reset in terms of the track record and what Kalen DeBoer can sell to incoming recruits. He has produced NFL picks at Washington, but that's something that he needs to continue to show prospects coming in, that his system at Alabama, that his offense in particular, can get players ready for the NFL and be a better fit than other systems elsewhere in college football.
Appreciate our guys having so much fun with that prompt. You can check out all the great team sites. If you're also a basketball fan, they have you covered on that. But also all things spring football, recruiting, and off-season storylines. You might be wondering, where's Florida in this discussion? The SEC champs. Well, we need to have a deeper discussion on the Gators, so we bring in Zach Goodall from Swamp 24/7 to talk about these Florida Gators. And Zach, I'll give you the same prompt we gave everybody else, which is, how can the football team learn from the SEC championship basketball team?
Sure. I guess if we're looking at it for this season, it might be a little late at this point with only one more transfer portal window to come. But the way I'd look at it is Florida needs to be more successful in the transfer portal when it comes to football. You look at basketball, and Todd Golden has largely built his teams through the portal and really hit on a lot of players there. That's not to say that Florida football hasn't done that. Billy Napier, I think especially at wide receiver over the past couple seasons, has done a good job evaluating some, as Smoke put it, Moneyball type of players. But they've had a fair share of misses too, more at the top of the market, just a lack of aggression, so to speak. And you have to wonder in hindsight if some of those players could have helped Florida get over the hump a little bit faster than they seem to have believe. At least they've gotten over the hump entering this season.
Zach, last Wednesday, Cooper Tagnan and I sat down to discuss your tweet, just speaking about DJ Lagway's lack of him throwing and his health concerns in spring football. We also unpacked Billy Napier's comments as well, too. But we're just trying to figure this thing out. What's the current status on DJ Lagway?
Yeah, I'm sorry for giving you guys a scare, but don't shoot the messenger. This is now, we're through 4 practices that media has gotten to see of the 5 that have been held so far. We didn't get to go out there Saturday, but through the 4 that we've been there for, DJ Lagway has not thrown a pass in front of us. He's simulated his footwork, as I mentioned. He's, as we see in these videos, doing handoffs and some other light work, but they're not letting him show off his arm, the arm that has gotten him so much hype going into this season and obviously last year. We've not seen one. Perhaps that's happening behind the scenes, but Billy Napier doesn't make it sound like that. He's offered that Lagway has been calling in plays to the quarterbacks who have been taking his reps in team drills. So at this point, he's unavailable in spring camp for all intents and purposes, other than the walkthroughs that he's doing. And what these injuries are, kind of still figuring that part out too. Billy Napier said that both of these injuries occurred in the postseason, that this is not unnormal, to quote him. But we really don't know what they are or how serious they are, the severity. We talk about the hamstring injury that he had against Georgia and he ended up playing through. We don't know for a fact that that is the lower body injury that's occurring here. Billy Napier just called it an undisclosed lower body injury, and that's what we got to work with, paired with the throwing shoulder.
When do we anticipate potentially seeing him throw the football, or was that not laid out?
That's not laid out. I would love to have a better update. And maybe this spring break gives him a little extra time to rest his shoulder, and he's close, right? I mean, when he's doing those footwork drills and you can see him kind of pulling his shoulder through, like you'd think, he's wearing a helmet, he's wearing pads, you'd assume that it's going to happen sooner rather than later. But here we are again, 4 that we've seen, 5 that have been held in total, and it doesn't necessarily sound like it's something that's going to happen soon. I asked Billy Napier about it on Saturday, and he didn't offer a timeline of any sort.
Man, scary. I've never been through a situation where it wasn't a disclosed injury why the quarterback's not throwing the football at least once or attempting.
And it's not as obvious as him walking around in a walking boot or a sling. You know, from what you've determined, he looks fine. It's just you haven't seen him throw the actual football. But I want to ask you something too, just about. We learned this from a tweet. We also learn other things. You're a great follow on Twitter. You should check out Zach on Twitter. And something else that you mentioned is, in a positive way, is observing some of these freshmen and these newcomers that are coming in. And the wide receivers with Vernell Brown and Dallas Wilson are 2 that you said have been the biggest impact that you've seen so far. What have you seen from those guys early on in this spring ball?
Yeah, I would hate to overhype anything too much when they've, not had full pads on yet and being so early. But I mean, these guys aren't struggling not having DJ Lagway out there, from what I can tell. 2 borderline 5-star receivers in the class of 2025. Vernell Brown, obviously being a legacy player. His father, he's got more than I can count on one hand amount of relatives that have played at Florida. Dallas Wilson being the post-signing day steal from Oregon. 2 fantastic players who do things very differently. I see Vernell Brown as someone who's really already got a different level of acceleration as a route runner, especially in the intermediate game, that I think could really do a lot for Florida out of the slot position. And Dallas Wilson came in looking like $1,000,000, I would say, already at 6'3", almost 220, and I think he's cut that down a little bit since. Just looks like the X prototype kind of receiver, go up and get it, but has the athleticism to win with speed, and be a sharp route runner as well. Now, Florida's got a pretty packed wide receiver room. Jermichael Sturdivant being a transfer that I do think could do very well at Florida, especially after a little bit of an up and down career out on the West Coast, and some other returning talents as well. It's not necessarily going to be easy for Wilson or Brown to go and log 60 receptions as freshmen, but at the same time, that's proven doable in this offense. Eugene Wilson did it as a freshman in 2022 or 23, excuse me. They certainly could carve out a role, just given, at least in my opinion, the early returns that we've already seen in practice. They seem very comfortable so far.
Zach, looking at this schedule this year, what's your expectation for this season?
I still go back and forth. I think that this is far and away the most talented roster that Billy Napier's had in his time at Florida. And I think that while it's taken a long time, and certainly some Florida fans have been less patient than others about it, that is a testament to what Billy Napier and his coaching staff have done in terms of just putting together a roster with depth really across the board, some star power, bringing players back who had the option to go into the NFL draft this year, reducing the number of transfers that they've been dealing with on an off-season to off-season basis. They've only had 13 out this off-season, by far the fewest under Napier so far. At the same time, I think some of the bigger concerns that most people will point to is play calling on offense, for one, and being so enamored by the systems that Napier and company have put in place over the past couple of years. It seems as though from an on-field schematic standpoint, they're really bought into what they're doing, and they're pointing to this 4-game winning streak and this really the strong end to last season as proof of concept that what they've been so dedicated to installing is working. Is that a worthwhile bet? There's still a lot of bad football throughout the Billy Napier tenure that one could argue maybe they're getting a little bit too far ahead in their belief in what they're doing. But you ask anyone inside this building, their goals, their ambitions are college football playoff or bust this season. I think Billy Napier would tell you that. I think most of the players would if they have not already put that on the record. And that's where it comes from. There's a sense of belief that's really radiating inside of UF, and their expectation at a minimum is to try and push it all the way.
Hearing that from fans, too. My man Gator Boy in the YouTube chat right now thinks that the Gators go 10-2 and make it to the playoff. That would certainly be an exciting rebound. We saw them last year and on a high note, so got to continue that in 2025. Zach Goodall, thank you so much for joining us here on the Ultimate College Football Show. You can check out more of his work at Swamp 24/7. That's where you'll get all the great basketball coverage and football coverage as we get ready to go for March Madness, and the 2025 college football season will be here before we know it. I'm willing that into existence, Smoke. I hope it's here before we know it because it feels so far away. Let's go back and look at this schedule for Florida, and you're taking a look at this. You heard what the expectations were from Zach's standpoint, and inside that building, they're talking about playoffs. How realistic is that? How many games are they winning here in 25?
It's a realistic goal, but I don't see them winning 10. I got them winning 8.
Oh, okay.
And when you look at it, it's just that middle of the schedule from LSU on till you get to A&M. You got to figure a way how to go at least 3-1 in that to even have a chance at getting 10. But I'm going to give him 8 just because of DJ Lagway and just what he does to that building. He brings so much attention and gives you so much energy in that building of belief. And when your quarterback is the best player and your quarterback gives you that belief, everybody around him, offensive line, plays at a higher level because they don't want to see that guy get touched. Running backs in pass pro pick up the free linebacker coming through there. Yeah. Receivers will go up and make any catch for you just because they know that without this right arm of DJ Lagway, we don't really have a chance.
Mm-hmm. So if Florida, you have them going 8-4, if they win 9 games, just 3 losses, Gator Boy's back in the chat. He wants to know, can they make the playoff with 3 losses?
I think you can. Because that you put you in the same scenario that Alabama was in. And looking at their schedule, strength of schedule is going to play a role this year. And when you look at their schedule's pretty strong.
You mentioned DJ Lagway. We're not going to take him out for the season. We just want to see him throw the football in spring practice. Is that too much to ask? But if he doesn't go, I mean, how much is your prediction for Florida riding on his arm?
You go back to Florida of old, 4 wins.
Oh, jeez. So quite a bit is riding on DJ Lagway. Okay.
He is the straw that stirs the drink in that building. Without him, his legs and that right arm, and just the belief and energy that he brings to that building and the coaching staff and every single player, and also in recruiting, you don't have a chance.
Yikes. Okay. Well, I don't know a doctor that can fix DJ Lagway, but I know a doctor that can fix your football teams. The doctor is in. It is time to welcome on everyone's favorite football doctor, Smoke FD, and today he's going to help diagnose some issues and also offer a cure, because that's what we love. We don't want you to just come in here and say, you're sick, you're sick, you're sick. We want the prescription for solving some of these teams. So let's start with Florida State. Clearly the illness is 2 losses. But what's the diagnosis going into this year?
Well, diagnosis is cultural. You have to switch that stink and get that stink off of you from last season. And that started at the end of the season before, when they went 13-0. They didn't get into playoffs. It was the first team out. They go down to Florida and play Georgia. Kirby and the boys put 60 on them, a 60 burger. And now you go into the next season with that same stink. You didn't get it off. So now we get to this season. The fix, clear house in terms of coordinators. You go in, Gus Bus, Thomas Castellano. That's Gus Malzahn coming in from UCF. And coming in with energy again, with a new way of calling plays, a new way of just energy. And your quarterback is now the little pocket rocket that provides you with legs and enough arm talent to get it out to your receivers and create those plays. Now on defense, they struggled. They spent a bunch of money on the defensive line with 0 production. Looked good in the draft process, but on field, no. So you go out and get Tony White from Nebraska. Energy, again, toughness, physicality, point of attack strength. And overall, new feeling in the building.
I think I said 2 losses for Florida State last season. They would love 2 losses, 2 wins. That's why you're the doctor, and I'm just here asking the questions. How about Oklahoma? What's the diagnosis here, Doc?
Offensive plays, and we struggled with it. And overall, just talent acquisition and building out the way that your personnel department gets ran. So what do? Go out and hire Jim Nagy.
That's the cure?
That's a cure for the personnel department.
Okay, what's another diagnosis, though?
Well, you look at it and say, well, offensively we struggled. So what do we have to do? We got to go get a quarterback, because our quarterback just left, and he's down at Auburn now. And we will go out and we get Ben Arbuckle from Wazoo, Washington State. And we bring John Mateer with them to create explosive plays within our offense, because that's what we struggle with, because we know that our coach is a defensive guy. And when you go back now to the personnel department, Jim Nagy comes from the Senior Bowl, understands how to get your high school side right, but also understands how to get the portal side right and create those money ball players. Unearth some of those diamonds in the rough, get the trenches right, get the defensive line right. We have a chance at Oklahoma. Resurgence, but that's what we got for them. That schedule, oof.
That's tough, yeah. That's a tough pill to swallow, as someone might say. How about USC? What is the diagnosis here? What's wrong?
We looked at it and said, okay, issue is recruiting California and finishing in the top 10. Another diagnosis is roster management. So what do? We got to take our medicine, Emily.
Yeah.
We go out and get one of the best general managers, Chad Bowen. Chad comes over from Notre Dame, understand structure, understand how to finish out in the NIL and pay guys the right amount of money without overpaying, because USC's been guilty of doing that. But in the recruiting front, he understands that Cali has some of the better players. And when USC was rolling, they were shopping in their state, and they were retaining the absolute talent that was there. So right now, last time I checked, they're in the top 3 in recruiting for the 2026 class. So it's starting to happen now. Young players, and now we got to address them in the portal in the spring edition. So I think they'll fix that as well, too.
All right, there you have it. The word from Smoke FD, football doctor. He has the diagnosis, but also the cure for your football team. And now it is time for us to answer ultimate burning questions. I'm so excited about this. I think we got some spicy ones today. This one is from Alvin Ferguson. Oh, that is a cute dog. That is a very cute dog. I'm getting distracted. But he submitted this question here on Instagram saying, long-time caller, first-time listener. I don't know if dogs can talk, but I'm sure he's a great listener. He's not. Spoiler alert. Love the show. My question, what sport has the best postseason tournament? I like this time of year because I feel like we're getting close to what I would pick.
Listen, the seat's kind of warm. I know where you want me to go with this, but I'm going to go with the NFL playoffs.
Okay.
Just because of the intensity and just the focus and just the overall play. And just the best players playing on the national stage. So you might get a second round or even a first round game where you see Josh Allen plays against Lamar Jackson. And then in the next round, you see Josh Allen versus Patrick Mahomes. Get to the Super Bowl, you see the best team, Philadelphia Eagles, play against the best player, Patrick Mahomes. So what's better than seeing the best versus the best at all times? NFL playoffs.
What's better than seeing the best? Seeing Jack Golke go off for 15 threes and taking down Kentucky in the first round of the NCAA tournament. I like the madness part of March Madness, the Cinderella stories, the unexpected twists and turns that the tournament brings. You don't get that in the NFL playoffs. We got maybe a little bit with Jaden Daniels and taking his team. You know, you cannot beat what we get in March Madness, which is these storylines.
Here's the reason why I think the NFL gets it right, because it's usually the best teams that make the playoffs. When you look at March Madness, it's not the best 64.
No.
It's just simply you can have a team that wins the OVC and they sucked all year, go 8-14. They get a good run, they get in the playoffs, and they play 1 versus 16. That's a laugher. Who wants to watch that? So I have to wait until the Sweet 16 or Elite 8 to watch real good basketball. In the NFL, first round, great. Second round, great. Third round, great. Super Bowl, even better, because everybody watches that. It's the number one show.
Everyone does watch the Super
Number
Bowl.
one show.
I'm just here for the chaos. Also, the disrespect to SIU, Edwardsville. It's their first time making an NCAA tournament. You're going to say they're just coming out of the OVC.
One and
It's a good
done.
basketball conference.
One and done.
Yes, but this is where their dreams are come true. I mean, these are once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. I think there is nothing better than March Madness.
How is Cinderella's shoes constructed? Is it glass?
Yeah.
Typically breaks.
Oh, but it's so fun. It's so fun. All right, we'll get to our next burning question. Agree to disagree here. March Madness is the best postseason tournament. Tiger Pride 555 asks on X, Cade Klubnik is coming in with high expectations this season. Could we see him break the record for single-season passing touchdowns in the ACC? That record is currently held by Kenny Pickett, 42 back in 2021. Does Klubnik break it?
I think he shatters it.
Ooh, speaking of glass.
Yeah,
How so?
I think he shatters it. He's getting back his skill position players, all 3 young receivers, third year in that offense, continuity. Knowing Coach Sweeney, he wants that for that young man. That young man, Cade Klubnik's been through hell and back.
Yeah.
From almost getting ran out of town, from last year playing well, to this year now saying, okay, our captain's here, our leader's here, our receivers are back, our tight end's back, our offensive line back, and it's his third year here in the same signal caller, calling the same plays. Yeah, they're going to light up the scoreboard.
So more than 42 touchdowns for Cade Klubnik in 2025.
50.
50?
We've seen it before. We've seen guys score 50 touchdowns.
Okay.
Yeah, 50 in Heisman. If he
50?
gets that.
I'm not even asking any more questions, but you're just giving up all the information.
I'm just telling you.
There we go. Cade Klubnik, 50 touchdown passes in 2025 and Heisman.
Little hand.
Man, I
Kenny
love
guy.
March 17th. That's the best time to make a prediction like that. He's Smoke Dixon. I'm Emily Proud. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Ultimate College Football Show. We'll be here every Monday and Wednesday at 4 o'clock Eastern. You can also watch it back here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. We're all across all socials, so check us out there. We'll see you Wednesday.